This happened over the span of 3 or 4 years when I was a kid. I can't remember exactly when the first one happened, but I started getting this weird dream again and again, sort of like a half-lucid nightmare. It only happened once every couple of months. From what I still remember, the dream usually went like this. I'd be lying in bed, but I wasn't seeing things from my own eyes. Instead, it felt like I was watching myself from up near the ceiling, almost like viewing my room through a security camera. That strange, out-of-body feeling always creeped me out. I'd try to move, to float down towards my body, but I never could. All I could do was turn my head a little to look around the room. I knew I was dreaming, but that didn't make me any less scared. After calming myself a bit, I would start noticing weird things about my room. The first strange thing was always the digital clock on my nightstand. It would be counting backward. That's usually when I'd realize I was in that dream again. After that, more odd things would show up. There were these crayon drawings taped randomly on the walls in my dresser. They looked like something a kid would draw, but I had no memory of ever making them. I wasn't the kind of kid who drew much, so it wasn't like I had forgotten. The drawings always looked the same. A bunch of smiling people holding hands and one smaller person who I assumed was me. They were all standing in front of a house with a blue roof. I can't really remember much more about the pictures. Another thing that always stood out was a toy train on the floor, which was strange because I had lost that toy a long time ago. But in the dream, it was always there and always in a different spot. After looking around the room for a while, I'd get this strong urge to look out the window. As soon as I looked over, like clockwork, a man would appear just inches away from the glass. He had short gray hair and a cut on the side of his forehead. That's about all I can remember of his face. He would just stand there and stare at me sleeping, then suddenly start scratching at the window like he was trying to open it. That's usually when I woke up. Sometimes I'd run straight to the window. Other times I was too scared to move. But eventually I always ended up checking it. I don't know what I expected, maybe some marks or a fingerprint, but there was never anything there. No sign that anyone had been outside. After the fourth time it happened, I told my parents. My mom said it wasn't that strange for kids my age to have the same dream more than once. And my dad reminded me they were always close by if I ever got scared. I nodded like that helped, but deep down it didn't. My dad noticed I was still scared, so he took me outside and walked around the house with me. There was no sign anyone had been there. No footprints, no marks on the glass. Nothing. But even that didn't calm me down much. That was about a year in, and I had been getting the dream every few months. It wasn't happening all the time, but 4 times was enough to make me believe it meant something. Even at that age, I felt it was more than just a dream. After that fourth dream, though, they stopped. For a while, at least. I went about 6 months without a single one. I started to believe it was all over. The dream just faded into the background, like many childhood fears do when life becomes more normal. But then one night, out of nowhere, I had the dream again. Everything in it was exactly the same. The clock, the drawings, the toy. But something about it felt much worse. I couldn't figure out why, but it felt different. Then while looking around the room, I saw what it was. My bedroom window was open. That's when I woke up. For about 5 minutes, I couldn't move. It was full-on sleep paralysis. I couldn't even blink. And it wasn't just like lying still. I felt a sense of panic, like I needed to check the window immediately, but my body wouldn't let me. On top of that, I felt freezing cold, like air was blowing in through the open window, which I believed was wide open. Those 5 minutes were the scariest thing I had ever gone through. I kept thinking the man was just about to come through the window, and I couldn't stop him. When I finally regained control of my body, I dragged myself to the window. It was locked. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I was too shaken up. I don't know how I managed to get through the next morning like everything was normal. A few more months passed, and I wasn't about to pretend it was over again. Every single night before bed, I made myself think about the dream, hoping that doing so would help me stay calm if it came back. I don't know if that makes any sense, but weirdly enough, it worked. The next time I had the dream, I wasn't even that scared. I didn't bother checking the window when I woke up. By the time I had it again, I was hardly scared at all. Still, the dream stuck in my head, not in a terrifying way, but enough that I decided to bring it up with my parents again. Maybe it was the way I explained it, or maybe it was because I was a bit older, but this time they actually listened more seriously. I told them everything I could remember, something I hadn't really done before. But when I got to describing the man, things got weird. My parents started acting strange, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. It was when I talked about the cut on the man's forehead that my dad suddenly interrupted and asked if I was sure about that detail. I said I was, and he gave my mom a look like they knew something I didn't. I asked them what was going on, but they told me not to worry and said everything was okay. I didn't want to make them uncomfortable, so I didn't push for more answers. But inside, I started to feel like maybe there was more to this dream than just my imagination. A few days later, my parents sat me down and told me something. It wasn't some big dramatic talk. They just said there was something they thought I should know. My mom did most of the talking. She told me that when I was really little, too young to remember, there was a man named Brian who used to look after me sometimes. They called him Uncle Brian, but he wasn't actually family, just a good friend of my dad's from college. I guess he was around a lot when I was a baby and toddler, especially when both of my parents were working. But something happened. My dad didn't go into much detail. He just said there was a falling out, and it was serious enough that they cut all ties with Brian. My dad said he never wanted Brian near the family again, especially not near me. That was all they told me. I asked what happened, but they said it had nothing to do with me, and I shouldn't worry. But the part that really messed with me was when they said Brian had a scar on his forehead from a car crash, years before I was even born. They didn't spell it out, but I didn't need them to. I was old enough to connect the dots on my own. That night after my mom had gone to bed, my dad stayed up with me. It felt like he had more to say. After a while, he finally spoke. He said he believed the dreams were my brain's way of dealing with something that happened a long time ago. Something I couldn't remember because I was too young. He told me I used to be really close to Brian, that I would cry when Brian left and always wanted him to read to me at bedtime. My dad said he couldn't think of any other way I'd know about the scar on Brian's forehead. I didn't know how to respond. I had no memory of Brian at all. Even now, I still can't picture his face or anything about him, but I had no choice but to move forward, whether the dreams came back or not. Over the next year, I only had the dream once or twice. It was less frequent, and I started to think maybe it was really ending this time. But in year 4, things took a dark turn. One night after waking up from the dream, I looked at my window out of habit, and I swear I saw something move. It was fast, just a flicker, but I was completely sure something had just been outside. That old fear came rushing back stronger than ever. I jumped out of bed and screamed for my parents. They took me seriously. My dad ran outside barefoot while my mom held me close. When my dad came back in, he whispered something to my mom, and then they told me to stay inside while they called the police. I stayed in their room like they told me to, though I don't remember hearing any sirens or voices other than my parents that night. My dad kept saying everything was fine and that the police would handle the situation. The next day, he told me something he hadn't mentioned before. He said he thought he saw really faint footprints under my bedroom window. I asked if he believed it was Brian, but he told me that wasn't possible because we had moved houses and Brian didn't know our new address. My dad promised that nothing bad was ever going to happen again, and in the end, he was right. I never had that dream again after that. My parents don't like to talk about that night, and I understand why. I've never gotten a full answer from them, and I've stopped asking. What really stays with me, though, is this awful thought that maybe every time I had that dream, someone really was outside my window watching me. I keep wondering, Could it really be true that someone had been secretly watching me off and on for 4 years? It doesn't add up. And honestly, I can't decide what would be scarier. That it really was Brian all along, or that it was some random stranger my mind just connected to Brian for some unknown reason. And I don't even know how any of that would have ended up in my dreams. I've tried researching it, but I still can't explain how that could happen. Maybe the person made a sound or something, and my brain picked up on it while I was sleeping. I really don't know. What I do feel pretty sure about, like 95% sure, is that my parents didn't actually call the police that night. And that's something I'll probably never get a clear explanation for. It's likely I'll never get answers about any of this since it all happened such a long time ago. But if I ever do find out the truth, I'll definitely post an update. I'll keep this part short. Most nights I fall asleep while listening to something. It helps me fall asleep quickly. Sometimes it's a chess video. Other times it's a podcast about space. Sometimes it's just the sound of rain or thunder. You get the idea. I tend to dream a lot, so whatever I listen to often ends up in my dreams somehow. For example, if I'm watching soccer highlights before bed, I might dream I'm playing in a soccer match. This method has been really helpful because I used to get nightmares all the time growing up, and this helped me avoid them. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a sleepover at my friend Duncan's house. Since it was a sleepover, I didn't have anything to listen to, so I had to fall asleep without sound. That wasn't a big deal, but it did mean my dreams would probably be more random. It was me, Duncan, and Ian that night. Duncan's parents were out of town, which is why we were allowed to sleep over. He has these huge comfy couches in the living room, so that's where we all slept. That night I had one of the most detailed and vivid dreams I've had in a long time. In the dream, I was on a small sailboat way out at sea. I don't know why, because I've never even been on a sailboat before. The water was really rough, and the sky looked like a weird mix of purple and gray. The wind was loud, but it didn't feel scary. It felt more like I was in some kind of dramatic movie. Then the boat suddenly jerked hard. I didn't see what we hit, but I felt it. Something cracked underneath, and water started flooding in fast. I tried to block the hole with my jacket, but of course, that didn't help. I started freaking out, totally panicking. And right when the boat was about to sink, a dolphin leaped out of the water, looked me in the eyes, and clearly said in English, "Wake up." That snapped me awake instantly. Usually when I wake up, I feel foggy for a while. But this time was different, though I wasn't sure why just yet. I looked around the room trying to see if anything was off. Everything seemed normal. My friends were still asleep, and the living room looked just like it did before we went to bed. You know that weird moment right after you wake up where your brain hasn't caught up yet? That's what I was feeling. A few seconds later, though, I noticed something. There was this sound coming from upstairs. It was a steady rushing sound, like water. Not like a dripping tap, but a full-on stream, like a hose had been left running. That must have been why I dreamed about water in the boat. I sat up and listened for a bit, trying to figure out what it was. And then, being the genius I am, I decided to go check it out myself. I crept up the stairs as quietly as I could. The sound got louder with every step. It was definitely running water, and it was coming from the bathroom at the end of the hallway. The door was a little open, and from where I stood, I could see the sink. One of the faucet knobs was turned all the way on, and water was pouring out nonstop. There's no way that just happened on its own. It didn't make any sense. I walked closer to the doorway and was just about to go inside, but something made me freeze. The upstairs bathroom is pretty big. There's a long counter, a bathtub with a curtain, and a weird corner where the toilet is. Lots of places someone could hide. Someone could have been crouched behind the tub or even standing behind the door. My stomach dropped and I couldn't bring myself to go in. I backed away slowly and ran downstairs to wake up Duncan. I shook him and told him something was wrong. At first he was half asleep, but I must have sounded serious enough because he sat up and asked what was going on. I explained that the sink upstairs was turned on full blast, and I thought someone might be in the house. That got his attention real quick. We left Ian still sleeping and headed upstairs together. When we reached the bathroom door, Duncan didn't hesitate at all. He just pushed the door open and walked right in. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Almost immediately, someone jumped out from the side and tackled Duncan hard. It happened so fast. 1 second Duncan was standing, and the next he was on the floor with some guy swinging a PVC pipe like he was ready to beat him. I didn't think, I just jumped in to help. I threw myself at the guy to get him off Duncan. We were both wrestling with him, trying to hold him down, but he was stronger than both of us. It was total chaos. Eventually, the guy broke loose, shoved us aside, and ran down the stairs. By the time we reached the porch, he was already gone. The police showed up about half an hour later, but they weren't much help. They figured the guy came in through a window downstairs. It had been left unlocked and was wide open. Duncan's family doesn't have security cameras, so we didn't have any evidence to give them. The police said it was probably just some random burglar who decided to strike while the house was empty. But my friends and I don't really believe it was just a random burglar. First of all, why would someone breaking in make extra noise by turning on the bathroom sink? That doesn't make any sense. It felt like a trap, like he was trying to get someone to come upstairs. But if he was just there to steal something, what was the point of doing that? It makes us think that maybe his goal wasn't to rob the place. Maybe it was something more disturbing, something harder to explain. Duncan believes that whoever broke in knew his parents were out of town and thought he would be the only one home. If that's true, then it's terrifying to imagine what could have happened if I hadn't been there. Maybe that man had plans to really hurt Duncan. Maybe worse. I try not to think too much about what would have happened if I had gone into that bathroom alone. This happened on a Friday night not too long ago. My girlfriend's parents had gone out of town for a weekend trip. I think it was their anniversary or something like that. So Bonnie, my girlfriend, invited me to spend the weekend at her house. Usually her parents are pretty strict and wouldn't let me sleep over, especially not in her room. But since they'd be gone, we figured it wouldn't hurt anything. Bonnie lives in one of those quiet suburban neighborhoods where all the houses look almost the same. By 10 o'clock, it's always super quiet. Honestly, the area kind of creeps me out whenever I'm leaving late at night, so I was actually happy to stay there this time. I got there around 8 p.m., brought snacks, and we watched a movie. Just regular stuff. Her bedroom is upstairs and looks out over the backyard. From her window, you can barely see the thick row of trees behind their property. Since there aren't many outside lights, it's pitch black out there at night. It almost looks like a black hole. Bonnie has a queen-size bed, so we had plenty of space to sleep without being cramped. I'll skip the boring parts. We turned off the TV around midnight and slowly fell asleep. I don't remember the exact moment I fell asleep, but I do remember the strange dream I had that night. Before I explain it, I just want to say that I've only ever had a false awakening dream a couple of times in my life. This was one of those times. If you've never had one before, it's a really strange and intense kind of dream where you think you've woken up, but you're still dreaming. These dreams are one of the main reasons I think there are some things in this world we don't fully understand. In the dream, I woke up suddenly because I heard a door slam somewhere downstairs. Then just a few seconds later, I heard fast footsteps running up the stairs. I jumped up in bed, ready to stop whoever was breaking in. But then I noticed something that made me freeze. Bonnie's room looked exactly the same as when we fell asleep. Every single detail. But there was one thing different. A thin strip of yellow light was shining into the room from under the door. It was just a little bit of light, but I couldn't stop staring at it. My courage completely vanished. My eyes kept focusing on that small beam of light while everything else around it started fading. The footsteps reached the door, and I couldn't move at all. Then everything went quiet. I was still stuck staring at the light under the door when the voices began. At first, it was just one voice, a woman's voice, and she was saying cruel things about me. She insulted how I looked, how I thought, and said I had no future. Then it got worse. The voice started saying things that were very personal, things I had done, said, or thought that I had never told anyone, not even Bonnie. Soon there were two voices, then three, then dozens, all attacking me with stuff from my past. It felt like the worst parts of me were being pulled out and thrown in my face. I couldn't handle it. I ripped the covers off, ran across the room, and opened the door to confront whatever was on the other side. But as soon as the door opened, every light in the house went out, and I was surrounded by darkness. The voices stopped, and the air became so cold it actually hurt to breathe. For a second, it felt like I was in a completely different world. I stumbled backward in confusion until I reached the bed and hid under the covers like a scared little kid. And then I woke up, except I was still dreaming. I just didn't realize it yet. I sat up in bed, feeling shaky and trying to tell myself it was just a dream. But then I saw it, that same thin line of light under the door. And before I could even react, I heard the downstairs door slam again and the footsteps charging up the stairs. It all repeated exactly the same. The running, the voices, the door, everything. And just like before, I ran to the door and opened it, only to be hit by the same cold, pitch black nothing. When I finally really woke up for real, my heart was pounding. I was pretty sure I was truly awake now, but after going through 2 layers of dreams, I wasn't fully confident. Bonnie was asleep beside me, unaware of everything I had just gone through. That's when I knew for sure I was finally awake. In my dream, I had never even looked at Bonnie in the bed next to me. I started to feel calm again, but when I sat up and looked at the door, I nearly screamed. The same strip of light was there, just like in my dream. I couldn't believe it. Bonnie and I were supposed to be the only ones in the house, and all the lights should have been off. I stared at the light for a few seconds, not knowing what to think. Then I heard footsteps downstairs, clearly. That's when I knew for sure someone had broken in. I grabbed my phone and quietly called the police. After I gave them the details, I crept to the door and made sure it was locked. Then I tiptoed back to the bed and gently woke Bonnie, covering her mouth so she wouldn't scream. Thankfully, she stayed calm when I whispered what was going on. It felt like forever, but after a few very tense minutes, the police finally arrived. Things got loud downstairs. I heard them burst through the front door and shout. Once I was sure it was safe, I went downstairs and saw 2 masked men being taken away in handcuffs and loaded into a police car. I spoke with the officers and thanked them before going back upstairs. Bonnie's parents rushed home early after they heard what had happened. They weren't even angry that I had spent the night. In fact, after hearing everything, they were thankful I had been there. A week later, Bonnie called to tell me more. The police had told her parents that the men they arrested admitted they broke in after seeing a post on Facebook about the trip, thinking the house would be empty. As weird as it sounds, the break-in itself doesn't bother me that much. What really keeps bothering me is the dream. I can understand if the sounds of the break-in leaked into my dream. That part makes sense. But the content of the dream is what I can't explain. Bonnie says I might have some deep fears buried in my mind, and that's what came out. I don't like thinking about that, though, and the part that really bothers me is the door. I was lying down, so I shouldn't have been able to even see the bottom of the door. Yet somehow I recreated a perfect image of it in my dream. I still don't understand that. And the strip of light, that same little beam, I keep seeing it in my head. Even when I'm not asleep, I can picture it perfectly. It doesn't block my vision or anything, but it's always there, hiding in the back of my mind. I hope it fades with time, but a part of me is scared that it will be stuck with me forever. When I was 22, I started renting the basement apartment in my parents' house. It helped me save money while giving me a bit more privacy. Even though my parents were away pretty often, it still didn't feel fully private. I couldn't really invite friends or girls over without feeling like someone was always around. The basement apartment had its own setup with a lockable door separating it from the main house. It had an open layout with a small kitchen connected to the living room, then a hallway leading to my bedroom, bathroom, and laundry room. There was also a side entrance in the living room. This all happened one weekend while my parents were away, so I didn't have to worry about being too loud. I had my buddies Anthony and Jay come over to hang out, talk, and have a few drinks while we watched a hockey game. Since the house was empty, we blasted music as we chilled. I wouldn't say I was super drunk, but I definitely had a good buzz going by the end of the game. I usually kept the door to the upstairs unlocked when my parents weren't home because I didn't have to worry about them coming down. And the bigger fridge was upstairs, so that's where we kept the drinks. Since my friends had driven and were drinking, they decided to crash at my place for the night. The couch down there was huge and could easily fit 3 people if they laid the right way. After a long night of drinking, I said goodnight and headed to my room to sleep. A few hours later, I woke up in bed. It was still nighttime, or maybe early morning. I quickly realized what probably woke me up. There were footsteps coming from upstairs. Someone was walking around up there. I figured it was one of my friends going upstairs to grab water or something from the fridge, so I didn't worry about it too much. I closed my eyes to try and fall back asleep, but a few minutes later, I heard something else. The sound of my bedroom doorknob turning. Someone was trying to open it, but luckily it was locked. I always lock my bedroom door out of habit. I wondered why either of them would try coming into my room, but I didn't feel like dealing with it, so I just stayed quiet and hoped they'd give up and go back to sleep. It might sound odd, but I just didn't feel like getting up, and it worked. I fell asleep again not long after. When I woke up the next morning, Anthony had already left, but Jay was still sleeping on the couch. When he heard me opening the fridge, he slowly woke up and rubbed his eyes. I asked if he tried coming into my room last night, and he said no, or at least he didn't think so. He admitted he was pretty drunk and couldn't remember much. We went out to a deli nearby to get breakfast sandwiches and coffee, then ate in my backyard. He left not long after, and I went about the rest of my Saturday as usual. I didn't ask Anthony about the night before because, honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal anymore. I spent most of the day out with other friends and didn't get home until late at night. I wasn't drunk at that point, just tired from a long day. I had a snack, cleaned up, and got into bed. When I say got into bed, I mean I laid down and watched something on TV for about an hour. After turning off the TV, I instantly noticed the same kind of creaks and noises from above me, like footsteps, just like the night before. They sounded like they were coming from the kitchen upstairs. I had to stay really quiet and focused to hear them, but then the sound stopped. My heart started beating faster, and I got a nervous feeling in my stomach. I sat up and waited, listening for anything else. Eventually, I calmed myself down and laid back down, thinking it was probably just the house making normal sounds and that I was being paranoid. I couldn't have been more wrong. I should have trusted my gut when I heard the doorknob turning again. This time I jumped up fast like I was about to be hit by something. The doorknob moved just like the night before, but this time there was a soft knock too, then the knob again. I didn't say a word. I grabbed my phone and started texting my family and friends, including Anthony and Jay. I knew it probably wasn't one of them, but I was hoping someone would say it was. Nobody replied right away. My parents didn't answer either, probably asleep, and I knew they weren't supposed to be home until Monday. I wasn't about to say anything out loud or ask who it was. I quietly got out of bed and hid behind a dresser, grabbing something heavy just in case someone broke in. I stayed frozen like that for what felt like 10 minutes. There were no more knocks or sounds. I finally called 911 and whispered as quietly as I could, trying to make sure the operator still heard me. I stayed on the line with the 911 dispatcher until the police got there. I didn't want to open the door, so I asked if the officer could come to my bedroom window. When I saw an officer outside, I opened the window and gave him the key to the side door. Thankfully, I was on the first floor. Not long after, I heard the side door open and footsteps inside. That's when I finally left the bedroom and met the two officers. I turned on all the lights. The basement was small, so there weren't many places to hide. They searched it quickly, and then we all headed upstairs. I told them which rooms were which before they entered. When they opened my parents' bedroom, I suddenly heard yelling. I was standing in the hallway and peeked in to see what was going on. Two officers were yelling at someone hiding under my parents' bed. My stomach dropped. They told me to wait downstairs. A few minutes later, they were walking down with a tall, dirty, creepy-looking guy in a sweatshirt and shorts. They asked if I knew him, and I said definitely not. The way he looked at me was terrifying, like he truly hated me. He looked like he could have been homeless, or maybe just mentally unstable. Once he was out of the house, I felt a huge sense of relief. The police said if I or my parents wanted to press charges, we'd need to call the local precinct. After they left, I sent messages to every group chat I was in. It was super late, so only a few people responded. I called my parents early the next morning and told them what happened. They were shocked, as anyone would be. But since the man was homeless and hadn't taken anything, my parents decided not to press charges. I think it's possible I left the side door unlocked when Anthony and Jay came over, and the guy just walked in while we were playing loud music. Or, worse, he might have already been inside the house before we even knew. But something just didn't feel right. I walked to the window and gently pulled the curtain to peek outside. The moonlight lit up the tree and long shadows stretched across the yard. The wind was calm and everything seemed normal. I didn't see any animals or people. I shook my head and told myself I was just overthinking things. Maybe it was just a branch brushing the window or the wind. I convinced myself it wasn't anything serious and went to sleep. The following night, the scratching came back. But this time, it wasn't just scratching. It sounded like light tapping, like someone gently knocking on the window to get my attention. My heart skipped a beat, and I jumped out of bed. I grabbed a flashlight and carefully walked down the dark hallway toward the spare bedroom. Once I reached the window, I aimed the flashlight outside. Nothing. No one there, no animals, just the same empty woods. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was nearby. Something felt off, like the air was heavier than usual. I went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Every sound seemed louder, and every floorboard creak made it feel like someone was moving around inside the house. I lay awake listening until I finally passed out from being so tired. Night after night, the sounds continued. I kept hearing the same noises, tapping, scratching, and sometimes what even sounded like a soft whisper, like it came from inside the walls. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder to pretend it wasn't happening. One night I told myself I was going to face it. Maybe it was just some animal, maybe a raccoon or something that had snuck in. I went out to the shed in my backyard and grabbed a crowbar, just in case anything strange happened. I went into the spare bedroom and slowly opened the door. The air in the room felt stale and untouched, like it hadn't been used in a long time. I hadn't been in that room for months. I aimed the flashlight around, checking each corner, under the bed, behind the dresser. Nothing. I stood still for a moment, feeling kind of silly. It was just an empty room, same as always. But then I turned around to leave and noticed something. The closet door was slightly open. I didn't remember leaving it like that. My stomach dropped a little. I slowly walked up to the closet and pulled the door open all the way. It looked empty, but when I shined the flashlight into the far back corner, I saw something strange. A piece of dark cloth was stuck on the edge of the wall. It looked torn, maybe from clothing. My chest tightened, and I could barely think. Had someone been in my room? Had someone been in the house without me knowing? I backed out of the room, heart pounding, and slammed the door shut. I locked it and left the room, stepping outside for some fresh air, hoping it would help me calm down. The woods around me felt darker than usual, almost like they were closing in. Still, I tried to convince myself I was just nervous, that maybe being alone for so long had made me extra jumpy. That night I slept on the couch with a baseball bat by my side. Nothing happened. No tapping, no sounds. The silence was almost strange. The next night I told myself I was going to stay in my bed. I wouldn't let this fear push me out of my own bedroom. But just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard it again. The tap, tap, tap at the window. I jumped up with my heart racing and grabbed the flashlight. I ran to the spare bedroom, not caring how loud my footsteps were. This time, when I pulled the curtain back, I didn't just see the woods. I saw a shadow. Someone was standing right outside the window, just barely visible in the low light. I froze, my blood going cold. I turned away, thoughts spinning in my head. Who was that? Why were they there? I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny it anymore. Someone had been watching me from outside. I rushed to the phone, hands shaking so much I could hardly dial. When the 911 operator answered, my voice was filled with panic. "Someone's outside my house," I said, "and I think they're still here." I gave them my address, and they said help was on the way. I hung up and looked around, thinking about leaving the house. As I reached for my jacket, I heard something from the hallway, a floorboard creaking. Someone was walking inside the house. I didn't wait. I ran straight to the back door, flung it open, and took off through the woods. I ran as fast as I could without looking back, my chest burning with each breath. When I finally made it to the edge of my property, I saw police car lights flashing in the distance. I slowed down, shaking all over, and hid behind a tree while I watched the officers approach the house. Guns drawn, they started searching the place. I didn't stick around to see what they found. I couldn't. I knew whoever had been in that house, it wasn't over. I didn't feel safe there anymore. I haven't been back since. I checked in with the police to let them know I was okay, so they wouldn't think I went missing. The cabin still stands, sitting quietly in the woods. But it doesn't feel like mine anymore. Even now, whenever I close my eyes, I can still hear the tapping at the window. I don't know who was in the house or what they wanted, but I know one thing for sure. They were waiting for me, and they're still out there. This happened when I was about 15 years old, back in 2008. My parents went to the casino that night, so it was just me and my dog Abby at home. Around 11 p.m., I was chatting with friends on Instant Messenger and watching YouTube videos. As I typed and laughed, Abby suddenly started barking in the living room. I thought maybe my parents were back and waited, but after a minute or two of nonstop barking and no sound of the door opening, I got up to see what was going on. Abby was staring out the window that faced the driveway and still barking. It was too dark to see much, and with the outdoor lights off, I couldn't make anything out. I looked through the window and only saw one car parked, ours, so I knew my parents weren't home yet. I figured maybe she heard a neighbor's car or something on the road. We lived on a busy street, so strange noises weren't uncommon. I went back to chatting, but over the next few minutes I kept thinking I was hearing noises. Abby would bark, "Stop," then bark again like she was reacting to something. I was about to get up and calm her when I thought I heard a knock, or maybe some kind of rustling, near the living room door. I slowly got up again and walked into the living room to look out the window. Still nothing. I was starting to feel uneasy and didn't want to check the peephole, scared that I might see someone's face staring back. I made sure the door was locked and was about to leave when I suddenly heard knocking from the side door of the house. My heart jumped. I didn't know what to think. Did my parents get locked out? Was someone trying to break in? Were there multiple people? Before I could even sort out those thoughts, I heard the basement door being jiggled, like someone was trying to open it. Our basement was under the house, with the door hidden behind the deck in our backyard. You'd have to know it was there or really be looking to find it. Abby was now barking louder than ever, running around the house, clearly panicked. The noises from the basement got louder and then suddenly stopped. My stomach dropped. Everything went silent. I stood completely still, holding my breath, waiting for the next noise. Then Abby bolted down the stairs and started growling in a way I had never heard from her. She was usually a sweet, calm dog, but now she sounded like she was ready to fight. I felt frozen with fear for what felt like forever, but finally my survival instinct kicked in. I noticed Abby had stopped barking. I quickly called her back upstairs and locked the door that led to the basement. I grabbed our house phone, we didn't have cell phones yet, and ran into my parents' bedroom with Abby. That's where we kept one of our guns. I sat there in the closet, ready to call 911, gun in hand. But before I could dial, I heard the front door open. Abby ran out. I yelled after her, terrified, but then I heard my parents' voices. I rushed out to see them petting Abby and giving me a confused look. I quickly told them everything that happened. My mom was horrified. My dad grabbed his gun and searched the house inside and out for the next hour. He didn't find anyone. I didn't sleep that night. The next afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. My heart instantly skipped, and I ran to hide. My dad opened the door and saw it was my Uncle Pete standing there with an envelope. Uncle Pete was always kind of weird and made people uncomfortable. He treated my aunt badly and acted strange around the kids. Nothing illegal that we knew of, but everyone tried to avoid him. I played softball, and his daughter, my cousin, was on a younger team. I really liked her, and since I felt bad for her having a creepy dad, I often helped her with pitching and fielding. My mom and I listened from another room as Uncle Pete said something like, "I tried to stop by last night to drop this off, but no one was home." I couldn't hear the rest, but then I heard my dad slam the door shut. My mom and I came out and asked what happened. My dad, visibly angry, said that Uncle Pete had been the one sneaking around the house last night trying to get in. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a card and a gift card, thanking me for helping his daughter with softball. All that fear, panic, and terror because of my creepy uncle. My dad said he threatened Uncle Pete during the conversation, and after that, we barely saw him again. When I think back on this, I'm at least relieved I found out who was behind it. Otherwise, I might have spent years thinking it was a ghost, a burglar, or something even worse. I'm thankful Abby was there. She definitely scared him off when he tried to come in through the basement. Still, I have so many questions. What was he thinking? Why did he come so late at night? Why didn't he get the hint when no one answered the door? Why didn't he just call us first? And most disturbing of all, what would have happened if he had made it inside?